She boarded the plane quietly, like someone who did not want attention. The passengers around her barely looked up. To them, she was just a young girl traveling alone, carrying a small backpack and a calm expression. She walked slowly down the aisle until she reached seat 14A, the window seat. She placed her bag under the seat, sat down gently, and pulled the seatbelt across her lap. Nothing about her looked unusual or important. Even the flight attendants thought she was just another quiet traveler who preferred to keep to herself. Plane filled quickly with people talking, laughing, and finding their seats. While everyone around her spoke loudly about vacations, business trips, and family visits, she stayed silent. She looked out of the window, almost lost in the clouds. Even before the plane took off, a family nearby discussed travel plans. A man in front of her typed on his laptop nonstop, and a group of students behind her joked loudly. Yet she remained unnoticed, as if she faded into the background. The engine started. The cabin vibrated. Softly, as the plane rolled toward the runway, she closed her eyes for a moment, taking a long, slow breath. No one noticed that small detail either. No one realized that she wasn't breathing like a nervous passenger, but like someone preparing for something they understood deeply. When the plane took off, she held the armrest only lightly, not out of fear, but more like habit. Aviation was not new to her, but that was something no one knew. A little while after takeoff, the pilot made a routine announcement about weather, altitude, and flight duration. Passengers settled in. Some watched movies, others slept. She reached into her bag quietly and took out a small notebook. On the cover was a symbol simple, but meaningful to someone who understood it. She opened it and turned pages carefully, as if each one carried a story. She wrote something short, then closed the notebook again and put it away. No one paid attention. The girl in 14A was invisible to the world around her, but there was something unusual about her calmness. Even the turbulence did not shake her. A sudden drop made a few passengers gasp, and drinks spilled, yet she did not flinch. She looked out the window with steady eyes, scanning the horizon the same way a trained pilot or air officer might. But no one imagined she could be connected to anything like that. She looked too young, too gentle, too quiet for anyone to think she carried a past that the sky still remembered. About an hour into the flight, something unexpected happened. The plane's communication system made a strange sound sharp then. Silent, the crew exchanged confused looks. The passengers did not know anything was wrong. But the girl in 14 looked up immediately. Her expression changed, but only slightly. Something in the sound was familiar to her. Something she had heard in situations far more demanding than commercial travel. The lead flight attendant walked down the aisle with a smile that hid her worry. She checked overhead bins, ensured seat. Belts were fastened, and quietly spoke to another crew member. Passengers kept watching movies, but the girl in 14A kept still, listening more to the silence between sounds than to anything else. Then, outside the window, high above the clouds, she saw a shadow. It moved fast, too fast for a passenger plane. Her breath caught for a moment, not in fear, but recognition. She knew the pattern. She had seen it before, in training, in simulations, in moments where timing mattered. It was the shape of a fighter jet. Most people would have panicked if they saw a military aircraft flying parallel to their plane. She didn't. She slowly leaned closer to the window, her eyes following the dark silhouette. Another shadow appeared on the other side. 2 jets. They were flying in formation. F-22 Raptors. The flight crew still had not announced anything, but she understood what this meant. Something on the plane's communication system must have triggered a military response. She knew that F-22s only approached commercial aircraft for serious reasons. Yet she also sensed they were not preparing for danger. They were searching for identification, for confirmation, for a voice, She looked at the call button near her seat but did not press it. Not yet. She waited, watching the jets. One of them tilted slightly, as if looking directly at her window. Her heart beat once, heavy, like it remembered something she had promised she would never use again. A call sign. A name tied to a part of her life she had left behind. Passengers continued. Unaware. Someone threw a blanket over themselves. A child asked for juice. A teenager complained about Wi-Fi. But the girl in 14A felt the air around her tighten. She could almost hear the radio frequency, even though it wasn't turned on in the cabin. F-22 pilots would soon try to make contact again. They were waiting for someone, and she knew exactly who. She reached slowly into her bag and touched a small metal tag hidden inside a tag with a number and a call sign etched into it. A call sign that once made pilots snap to attention. A call sign she thought she had left in the past forever, but the sky never forgot. Asterisk. She sat completely still as the two F-22s held their position outside the windows. The passengers still had no idea what was happening, but she could feel the mood inside the cockpit shifting. Pilots never ignored fighter jets. Something serious had forced a military escort, but what bothered her most was the timing. The jets appeared exactly after the communication glitch. It wasn't random. They were searching for a specific person or a specific voice. And that voice used to be hers. She looked down at her hands, steady even now. She had spent years training them to stay steady in situations far more intense than this. Yet she had promised never to use that part of her life again. The world she left behind was full of noise, pressure, and decisions that could change everything. In seconds, this new quiet life suited her. This seat, 14A, was supposed to be just another seat on just another peaceful flight. But the jets outside refused to let her stay invisible. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the aircraft adjusted altitude. A few passengers murmured, thinking it was normal. The girl in 14A knew better. She could feel the captain's hesitation through the subtle changes in speed. The cockpit must have received some kind of coded ping from the F-22s. With communication down, the pilots were flying blind, unsure about the situation, but aware that someone on board might hold answers. Her heart tightened when she noticed one more detail. The right jet's wings dipped twice. Most passengers wouldn't know what that meant. For her, it was a message. A signal used in situations where radio contact was unavailable. A visual request. Almost like the jets were trying to ask a question without words. She exhaled slowly. They were asking, "Who among you is sending the silent echo?" Her call sign. The one she tried to bury. For a moment she considered staying quiet. Maybe the situation would resolve on its own. Maybe the pilots would fix communication soon. But then she saw the expression of a young mother across the aisle, holding her baby tighter as the plane shook slightly. She saw an elderly couple whispering to each other nervously. She saw fear building in people who didn't even know the full story yet. Her silence wasn't protecting her past anymore. It was now risking the peace of hundreds of innocent passengers. A flight attendant passed by, her smile thin and worried. The girl in 14A looked up and asked calmly, "Is everything all right?" The attendant hesitated, then leaned closer. "We're facing a communication issue, nothing dangerous. But air traffic control lost our signal for a moment. We're following procedures. Please stay calm." The girl nodded gently. "If you need help, you can tell me." The attendant gave a confused smile, not understanding the deeper meaning, and moved on. The girl in 14A watched her leave, knowing she could not say more, not yet. Outside, one F-22 slid ahead, still close enough that she could see the pilot's helmet. She leaned forward. The pilot raised a gloved hand and tapped the side of his helmet, an unmistakable gesture. He was sending a message. "Switch to emergency recognition if you can." She knew that system. She knew the hand signals. She knew the procedures. She had lived them. Finally, she unbuckled her seatbelt. A few passengers glanced at her, surprised, because until now she had looked like someone who blended into the background. She stood, slowly, steady, composed. She moved with a kind of quiet confidence that didn't match her small, gentle appearance. She walked toward the back of the plane, where a small door hid the internal communication panel used only in emergencies. Most people didn't even know it existed. She did. She had worked with systems like that. Her fingers brushed the edge of the panel. Remembering training sessions she tried to forget, she hesitated. If she opened it, everything she had worked hard to leave behind would resurface. The call sign she buried, the reputation she walked away from, the responsibility she didn't want anymore, they would all return. But the shaking plane reminded her that the safety of every soul on board mattered more than her fear of the past. She opened the panel just a little and saw the emergency manual frequency knob. The system flickered weakly. Something inside her chest tightened, as if a part of her long asleep was waking up. She looked toward the window again. The F-22 on the right tilted its wing once more, waiting. She pressed one small switch. Static filled her ears, then silence. Then a thin channel opened, barely stable. A military frequency. Her breath shook for the first time that day. If she spoke now, everything would change. The pilots would know. The jets would know. Her past would return. Instantly. She closed her eyes and let the years of training draw her steady again. She leaned toward the mic, but before she said a word, a memory flashed the moment her call sign had been created. A name given only to someone who earned absolute trust. In the sky, her fingers trembled slightly. She whispered one word, her call sign. A soft, calm voice that carried a history no one on the flight knew. When the jets heard it, the sky reacted instantly. The moment her call sign left her lips, the frequency crackled alive as if the sky itself recognized the voice it had been waiting for. For a second, the channel went silent, too silent. Not the silence of failure, but the silence of shock. It was the kind of pause that came only when experienced pilots heard something impossible, something they never expected again. Then a firm, steady voice broke through the static. Confirm that transmission. Identify yourself again. She swallowed gently. That voice belonged to a senior F-22 pilot. She remembered the tone, the command, the authority. Years ago, he had been part of a unit she once worked closely with. She never thought her path would crosses again, especially not 30,000 feet in the air. Surrounded by civilian passengers, she repeated her call sign softly. The panel vibrated slightly, struggling to hold the weak signal. The pilot's voice returned, louder this time, filled with disbelief. It can't be you. You were gone. Her eyes lowered. I stepped away. I wanted a quiet life. A long breath came through the radio. Not anger, relief. Where are you now? She glanced down the aisle. People still sat unaware of the truth unfolding quietly in the skies around them. I'm on board this aircraft. Seat 14A. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. The fighter jets outside adjusted formation immediately, with precision only elite pilots could manage. One slid slightly ahead of the commercial plane while the other stayed level with the left wing. They weren't threatening. They were protecting. The pilot on the frequency whispered something she never thought she would hear again. We thought we lost our best. She closed her eyes. Compliments had never made her warm. They only reminded her of the life she walked away from. A life full of missions, near misses, responsibilities, and expectations so heavy they had shaped every breath she took. I'm not that person anymore, she said quietly. I'm just a passenger today. Maybe, the pilot replied. But right now, the sky needs you. Before she could answer, a sudden jolt shook the plane. Not strong, but enough for overhead bins to rattle. A few passengers gasped. A toddler cried. People looked around nervously. The pilots in the cockpit were clearly fighting something more serious than routine turbulence. Her hand tightened on the edge of the panel. "What's happening up there?" She whispered into the mic. "We're reading irregular signals from your aircraft," the F-22 pilot said. "Your main communication system is unstable. Reports from ground control say your flight path drifted when the signal dropped. We're here to stabilize and protect." She understood what that meant. A plane drifting from its planned route without communication could be flagged as a potential threat. The F-22s had not come as enemies, they came to prevent confusion. But they still needed someone on board who could speak the language of the sky. Someone who understood both sides. Someone who had earned a call sign. She breathed out slowly. "I'll try to contact the cockpit," the pilot agreed without hesitation. "We'll keep formation. We're not leaving you." She closed the panel and walked forward. The aisle felt longer than before. Eyes followed her now, not because they knew who she was, but because they could sense calm in her steps when everyone else felt fear. She reached the cockpit door. A flight attendant rushed toward her. "Ma'am, you can't be here," she whispered nervously. "I know," the girl said gently, "but your communication system is failing. I can fix it." The attendant blinked in shock. "How do you know that?" Before she could explain, a soft ding echoed overhead, the kind used when cockpit crew requested a flight attendant immediately. The attendant hurried forward and spoke through the small intercom beside the door. Moments later, the door opened halfway. The captain's face looked tense, eyes sharp with concern. "We're in a restricted area," he said firmly. "Passengers are not allowed." "I can help you restore emergency communication," she interrupted softly. "And I'm already in contact with the F-22s outside." The captain froze. "What did you say?" She leaned closer. "I know why they're here. And I know they need confirmation that this aircraft is safe. I can speak to them in a code you understand." He stared at her, searching for any sign of uncertainty. He found none. Finally, he opened the door wider. She stepped inside, and the cockpit felt smaller than she expected, cramped, pressured, warm from the anxiety of two pilots trying to troubleshoot multiple systems at once. The first officer looked at her in disbelief. "Who are you?" She didn't answer with her real name. She answered with the only name the sky respected. Her call sign. Both pilots stared, speechless. "I'm here to help," she said quietly. "Tell me what systems failed first." The captain exhaled, not in doubt, but in relief. The communication panel went dead after a strange spike in the frequency. Then backup channels locked. "We haven't been able to reach control at all." She slid into the small jump seat behind them, her movements calm and practiced. "Let me see." She examined the lights, the frozen screens, the silent radio panel. Her eyes moved quickly, understanding the problem in minutes. The issue wasn't mechanical, it was a frequency jam, mild but stubborn. Something triggered it earlier, and she knew exactly how to override it. She touched a small switch, hidden beneath the main console. "Try now," she said. The captain hesitated, then tested the channel. Static. Then a clear tone. Connection restored. The pilots looked at her, stunned. Outside, the F-22s dipped their wings in acknowledgement. She had returned to the sky. Asterisk. The cockpit filled with a quiet shock as the communication panel came back to life. The captain stared at the blinking lights, then at her, as if trying to understand how someone so young, so silent, so invisible in seat 1-4 could bring order to a system trained professionals had been fighting for the last 20 minutes. "How did you do that?" The first officer whispered. She kept her eyes on the console, avoiding their gaze. "It's a standard override method. Old technique. Most new pilots don't use it anymore." The captain narrowed his eyes. "That's not standard. That's specialized training." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The steady tone coming from the radio said everything. It was the sound of a commercial aircraft being folded back into the safety of controlled airspace, the sound of the sky settling again. But before anyone could speak, the radio crackled again. "Commercial flight, this is F-22 unit leader. Confirm identity of onboard advisor." The captain looked at her. He knew the answer wasn't his to give. She leaned forward and pressed the button. "Unit leader, this is..." She stopped herself from saying her full title, the one she abandoned. Instead, she spoke only her call sign. The cockpit went silent as her voice traveled across the sky once more. The radio responded instantly. "We are adjusting formation. We are with you. Awaiting your direction." The first officer's mouth fell open. "They're taking instructions from you?" She looked out the cockpit window where the F-22s now moved with even sharper precision. "Not instructions," she corrected softly. "They're waiting to coordinate." Still stunned, the captain rubbed his forehead. "I think we need the truth. Who are you, really?" Her fingers tightened around the armrest. Telling the truth meant reopening a chapter she had sealed away, a chapter filled with choices she didn't want to relive. But the sky had already pulled her back in. Running from it now would only confuse the crew more. "I was part of an air defense coordination program," she said quietly. "Not a pilot. Not crew. My role was communication special frequencies, emergency protocols, real-time decisions. My call sign wasn't for flying. It was for guiding." The captain blinked. "You mean, you were the one who instructed fighter jets during critical missions?" She nodded slightly. The first officer let out a low breath. "That's not just training. That's elite work." She didn't confirm it. She simply looked down at her lap. "It was years ago. I left because I wanted a life without constant pressure. I never thought I would use any of this again." A soft chime interrupted them. ATC was trying to make contact now that communication was restored. The captain signaled her to stay as he answered. "Flight control, this is Captain speaking. We had a temporary communication failure, but systems are stable now. We are accompanied by 2 F-22s. The voice from a TC replied with structured calm. "We see them on radar. They reported unidentified signals earlier. Please confirm that all passengers and crew are secure." The captain looked at her again. She gave a small nod. "Affirmative," he answered. "We have an advisor on board. Assisting us." An advisor, that word made her chest tighten. She didn't feel like one anymore. She felt like someone who simply wanted to make sure everyone landed safely. But the sky had a way of remembering people, even when they forgot themselves. After the captain finished speaking to a TC, he turned to her once more. "There's more," he said carefully. "The F-22 unit leader requested a direct check-in from you before they adjust escort level." Her breath slowed. A direct check-in meant something deeper. They wanted confirmation not only that the plane was safe, but that she was truly on board. That her voice wasn't a trick or a recording or a mistaken memory from years before. She pressed the button again. "This is 14A, I'm listening." The unit leader spoke, his voice carrying both strength and emotion. "We never thought we'd hear you on comms again. You disappeared without a trace." She closed her eyes. "I needed peace. I didn't want the sky depending on me anymore. But the sky trusts you," he replied. "And today, the people on that aircraft needed someone who understands what they cannot see. That's you." She didn't know how to respond to that. Her past felt heavy, yet strangely warm. She had spent so long running from the part of her life defined by duty that she forgot how natural it felt to help in moments like this. The captain watched her, his tone softer now. "If you're comfortable, we could use your guidance for the rest of this flight. It might reassure a TC and the F-22s." She looked out the window. The two jets flew like guardians, silent, steady, unshakable. She could feel their trust in her through the formation alone. They weren't just escorting the aircraft, they were escorting her. "I'll help," she said finally. "But after we land, my life goes back to normal." "Understood," the captain said gently. "But for now we're grateful." She exhaled slowly as the aircraft turned slightly, guided once more into safe airspace. The passengers behind her never knew they had been at risk. They never knew the girl they ignored in 14A was quietly holding the sky together. As she looked at the horizon, one F-22 dipped its wing again, a salute only someone with her history would understand. A salute that said, "Welcome back," asterisk for a moment. The cockpit felt strangely warm despite the cold air rushing outside at high altitude. The captain and first officer exchanged relieved looks, but she kept her focus steady. The sky may have calmed, yet something inside her whispered that the situation was not finished. In her experience, silence after a crisis wasn't safety, it was transition. The radio crackled again with a low tone. Not a warning, not turbulence, a signal. A special one. Her body stiffened. She leaned forward slowly as the captain adjusted the volume. The sound repeated, short, then long, then short again. She felt the rhythm sink straight into her memory. It wasn't random interference. It was a coded request. The F-22 unit leader spoke, but his tone was different now, no longer firm and clear, but slightly cautious. "We're picking up a secondary pattern near your aircraft. Can you confirm onboard systems are stable?" The captain checked his instruments. "Everything reads normal." "Readings aren't the problem," the girl whispered. The first officer turned to her. "What do you mean?" She looked at the console again, her fingers hovering over a small panel the pilots rarely used. "The jets aren't seeing a problem with our plane. They're detecting something else in the airspace. Something unregistered. Something we can't see." The captain froze. "An unknown aircraft?" She nodded. The tension in the cockpit shifted instantly. Outside the window, one of the F-22s drifted farther from the commercial plane, sweeping the area with sharp turns. The other remained close, its presence suddenly more protective than before. Her heartbeat softened into a slow, steady rhythm. She knew what came next. Unregistered signals were rare. Detecting one meant the jets expected something that might require quick decisions. The radio clicked again. 14A. Stand by. We are checking the origin of the secondary pattern. The captain whispered. Why are they talking to you and not us? She lowered her voice. Because they think I can read what they can't explain yet. The first officer swallowed. Can you? She didn't answer right away. She listened again to the pattern, short, long, short. The spacing. The intensity. The strange fading at the end. It wasn't military. It wasn't commercial. It wasn't even emergency distress. It was something oddly familiar. A ghost signal. Someone out there is trying to latch onto our frequency, she said quietly. But they don't know how. That's why it keeps breaking. The captain frowned. Could it be a glitch? No, she said softly. It's intentional. Those words felt heavy, and the cockpit fell into complete silence. She pressed the radio button. Unit leader, describe the pattern strength. The F-22 pilot answered, weak, inconsistent. Not large enough to be a threat, but unusual enough that command wants identification. Unusual enough that command wants identification. That line echoed in her head. She knew someone, somewhere, was forcing their way into the skies in a clumsy attempt to communicate. And whoever it was, they were too close to a commercial route. The first officer whispered, could it be a small aircraft lost? Maybe, she said, but then the pattern would be different. This one feels like someone testing channels they don't fully understand. She didn't add the part about how the pattern felt similar to trainees who tried to learn emergency frequencies years ago, trainees she once guided. This one, however, felt unsteady, like someone working alone, without support. The plane suddenly shook, not violently, but enough to make everyone grab onto something. The cockpit lights flickered for half a second before stabilizing. Behind them, passengers gasped. A drink spilled. Overhead bin CLATTERED. The captain quickly checked readings. No mechanical issues. Why did we shake like that? She looked. Out the window. The F-22 closest to them had repositioned sharply. Its movements were precise, fast, almost defensive. "They're shielding us," she whispered. That meant only one thing. The unknown signal had come closer. The radio opened again. This time the unit leader's tone was sharper. 14A, your presence is requested. Do you read the secondary pattern as intentional? Her throat tightened. She knew what answering yes meant. It would shift the jet's protocol from observation to protective control. It would increase attention. It would place more responsibility on her shoulders, a responsibility she didn't want anymore. But she looked behind her, through the cockpit door left slightly open. She saw the passengers, some sleeping, some talking, some unaware that the sky around them had changed. She saw innocence, dependence, trust, and she knew she couldn't stay silent. She pressed the button. Unit leader, the pattern is intentional. But the source feels weak, not hostile. A breath of relief, almost silent, came from the captain. But the F-22 pilot continued. Hostile or not, any unregistered aircraft near a commercial flight is a threat. We are widening our circle. Stay coordinated. She nodded, even though they couldn't see her. Understood. The first officer whispered, "What do we do?" She stood slowly, calm returning to her frame like she had stepped back into a world she once knew too well. "We prepare," she said softly. "And we stay ahead." The captain looked at her carefully. Ahead of what? She turned toward the window, watching the jets shift into a new formation, one that signaled a higher level of alert. "We're not alone in this airspace," she whispered, "and someone out there doesn't know the rules." Asterisk, the unknown signal grew stronger, not in volume but in behavior. It pulsed in short bursts, then faded, then pulsed again as if someone was desperately trying to connect, but didn't know how to stabilize their channel. She leaned closer to the cockpit window, studying the pattern of light reflecting off the F-22 flying beside them. The pilot's movements were sharper now, each adjustment more deliberate. They were ready for anything, but the girl in 14A was not afraid. The sky felt familiar again, far too familiar for someone who had promised herself she would never go back to this life. It was strange how a quiet seat, a simple flight, and one unexpected signal could pull her into a world she thought she had walked away from forever. The captain's voice broke the silence. "Talk to us. What are they expecting us to do if that unknown aircraft comes closer?" She watched the radar on the screen in front of her. A small flicker appeared at the edge of the display, barely visible, unstable, moving in a way no trained pilot would ever move. "We don't do anything yet," she replied softly. "We wait for the jets to identify it. They're faster, and they can see beyond the clouds." The first officer swallowed. "And if it keeps coming toward us?" Her gaze didn't shift from the radar. "Then I'll talk to them." The captain frowned. "Them? You mean the unknown signal?" She nodded. "Yes, whoever is out there needs guidance. And if their signal is reaching this frequency, it means they're scared. Or lost." Outside, the F-22 on the right suddenly banked upward, slicing through a patch of clouds like a blade. Its partner remained by the airliner, flying closer than before. The shift was subtle, but her trained eyes caught it instantly. "They've spotted something," she whispered. The radio popped with static before the unit leader spoke again. 14A, the unidentified aircraft is small. Possibly a training craft or private build. No transponder. No identification. The captain exchanged a tense look with the first officer. "A private aircraft? This high?" She shook her head immediately. A small private plane isn't built for this altitude. They would have lost pressure, control, or consciousness. Long before reaching us, the first officer exhaled hard. Then how is it up here? That, she said softly, is exactly what worries me. The unknown signal pulsed again through the frequency, still uneven, still struggling. She leaned over the panel, fingers moving gently across the controls. She wasn't touching anything forbidden, only listening, reading, decoding the nature. Behind the patterned dot, it felt like someone tapping a message through a closed door. She pressed the emergency frequency button. Unit leader, can you attempt visual contact? We already are, he replied. The aircraft appears damaged. Possibly compromised. Pilot visibility unknown. Her heart dropped slightly. Damaged aircraft. No transponder. Pilot possibly unconscious or barely conscious. That meant the signal wasn't intentional. It was accidental, triggered by unstable equipment or a failing system. But the rhythm felt too controlled to be accidental. Can you describe how it's moving? She asked. Unsteady. Like someone is fighting to keep it level, but it's drifting toward your route. Her stomach tightened. She knew what that meant. The planes were on converging paths, and if the unknown aircraft was unstable, it wouldn't correct in time. The passengers had no idea that the sky around them was shifting with danger. A child laughed somewhere behind the cockpit door. Someone asked for water. Another stretched their legs. The world continued peacefully, unaware that all that peace rested now on decisions made inside this small, dimly lit cockpit. The captain broke through her thoughts. Can we divert? She shook her head gently. No. Changing course too fast could panic a TC, and the jets are adjusting to protect us. Let them complete visual contact. Then the radio clicked again, but this time the tone of the unit leader shifted sharply. 14A, we have partial visuals. The craft looks old, possibly decades old. Tail number scratched. Wing damage visible. Her breath caught. Old aircraft. Damaged wing. Inconsistent signal. She felt a memory rise during her training years. She had seen old crafts used by hobby pilots who practiced without supervision. Some ignored rules. Some didn't register their aircraft. Some tried to copy military patterns. Without training, but the rhythm of the signal. It felt like someone calling for help in the only way they could. Unit leader, she said softly. What about the pilot? Can you see them? A long pause followed. Then, we see movement in the cockpit. Weak movement. Her pulse quickened. We are preparing to intercept before it enters your direct path, the F-22 pilot added. But your guidance may be needed. Whoever is inside is not responding to standard commands. She took a deep breath, a calm breath. A breath she had learned to take in the most critical of moments. Open a channel for me, she said. I'll talk to them. The captain stared at her. Do you really think they'll hear you? She nodded slowly. If they sent that broken signal, then they're trying to reach someone. And maybe that someone is any voice that sounds steady. The first officer whispered, How will you know what to say? She looked out at the clouds, feeling the weight of the sky gather around her. Because I've spoken to pilots in worse conditions, she said softly. And sometimes, a calm voice is all they need to stay alive. The radio cracked again. Inviting her in, waiting for her words, she leaned toward the mic. Unknown aircraft. This is the commercial flight in your vicinity. If you can hear me, follow my voice. Her voice went out into the sky, soft, steady, unshaken. A voice she never thought she would use again. Asterisk, her voice traveled into the open sky. Soft but clear, carried by a frequency that barely held together. Unknown aircraft, if you can hear me, keep your wings level. Do not climb, do not descend. Just stay steady, I'm here. For a moment, there was nothing, only static, only silence, only the quiet hum of a commercial plane full of passengers. who still had no idea how close they were to danger, or how close they were to safety. Then the signal flickered again. Weak, uncertain, tired. But this time, intentional. She recognized it instantly. Someone was trying to answer her. Someone struggling, fighting the controls, fighting the altitude, fighting exhaustion. Her chest tightened as emotion rose, not fear, but a deep understanding. She had heard voices like this before during rescue missions, pilots who were lost, scared, or in the last moments of their strength. The radio crackled and a faint voice came through, barely a whisper. Help, the first officer straightened. We have voice contact. She leaned even closer to the mic, speaking gently. You're doing well. Keep breathing. Keep your hands steady. Can you tell me what happened to your aircraft? The voice trembled through the channel. Engine failure. Lost pressure. Instruments fading. Can't see straight. Her heart clenched. They weren't dealing with someone reckless or inexperienced. They were dealing with someone fighting for their life at an altitude their small aircraft should never have reached. She softened her tone even further. You're not alone. Look for the jet near you. Do you see it? It's there to guide you. There was a long pause before the voice returned. I think so. A shadow on my left. That's right, she whispered. Follow that shadow. Don't try to reach us. Stay with the jet. It will keep you safe. Outside the cockpit, the F-22 moved with slow grace, positioning itself directly beside the old damaged aircraft. It dipped its wing, once a gesture of reassurance, and matched the aircraft's unsteady rhythm. The captain watched the screen, tense. We're getting too close for comfort. She spoke softly without fear. They'll keep distance. The jets know how to escort safely. The unit leader's voice filled the channel again, this time with urgency. 1-4, we need you to keep them conscious. Their altitude is dropping too fast. She took a slow breath. Unknown aircraft, listen to me carefully. Keep your eyes on the jet, not on your controls, not on anything else. Just breathe and follow their line. The weak voice trembled. I can't hold. Yes, you can, she said firmly, but still gentle. You've held on this long. You're stronger than you think. The cockpit grew silent. Even the captain stopped breathing for a moment as they listened. Then the voice returned, slightly clearer. Okay. Following. Good, she whispered to herself. They're responding. The F-22 changed formation again, lowering slightly too. Pull the small aircraft into a safer descent path. It was a delicate maneuver. One mistake could end everything. But the fighter jet moved with practiced precision, trusting her voice to hold the other pilot together. Minutes passed like hours. The unknown aircraft stabilized little by little. The F-22 coordinated perfectly. The passengers behind them continued their peaceful travel, unaware that 2 lives, maybe hundreds, were being protected by the quiet girl from seat 14. Finally, the unit leader spoke. We have the unknown aircraft on a safe descent path. They will be escorted to the nearest airbase. We'll remain with you until your landing. She closed her eyes with relief, breathing out slowly. The crisis was ending. The sky was calm again. The captain turned to her, his expression full of respect. You saved them. You saved all of us. She looked down. I didn't save anyone. I just used what I once knew. The first officer shook his head. No, you stepped in when no one else could. Before she could answer, the radio cracked once more. It was the faint voice from the rescued aircraft, stronger now, clearer. Thank you, whoever you are. She felt a deep ache in her chest, but she smiled softly. You're safe now. That's all that matters. The channel closed. The F-22s resumed their protective formation, escorting the commercial aircraft to stable airspace. The passengers continued unaware, enjoying their flight, never knowing how close the sky came to breaking, or how someone among them held it together. As the plane began its slow approach toward the runway, the F-22 beside her window dipped its wing one final time, a silent farewell, a gesture only she would understand, a salute, a thank you, a recognition. The captain looked at her. "You sure you want to go back to a quiet life after this?" She nodded. "Yes, I just wanted one peaceful journey. I didn't expect all this." "Maybe the sky didn't expect to need you again," he said. "But it did." She returned to seat 14A as the passengers prepared for landing. People barely looked at her. To them, she was still the quiet girl in the window seat. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. And yet the sky outside knew her name. Her call sign, the one the F-22 pilots recognized instantly. The one they would never forget. Because sometimes the quietest person on the plane is the one who holds the entire sky steady.